Sir, you're ready to go live, sir.
Thank you, Christian. Christian, we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, sir, we are.
Could you do a roll call, please?
I certainly will. Councilman Brown,
Here.
Councilman Harkins,
Here.
Councilman Ames,
Here.
Councilwoman Becker.
Hughes.
We've got Councilman Lennox,
Here.
Councilman Stafford.
Here.
All are present, sir.
And need approval of the agenda.
Move for approval of agenda. Second.
All in favor, please raise the right hand. Thank you very much. Okay, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty,
and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, today we're here to review and discuss the preliminary local concept and key projects enhancements for the Hilton Parkway. We do have appearance by citizens. Krista, we'll do that now. What do you want to do? You have to after. Okay, got it. Yours, Sean.
I think Mark's. All right, I'll kick off. Good afternoon, Mayor and Town Council, members of the public. Today, the goals of the meeting, and I thought it would be important. I'm going to turn it over to Sean and Brian Kinselman. Sean's, of course, with us, and Brian's with MKSK. I'll turn it over to them in a couple of seconds, but I thought it was very important for me today to state the goals of our meeting and just really tee up our conversation today. So we want to recap the project progress to date in regard to really a fundamental, right, a technical fundamental and civic review of the Gateway Corridor project. We want to overview Town Council input today and the shared learnings today. And so we've had several workshops, we've talked with you, and today we'll overview some of that, a lot of that input. We also want to, through MKSK, provide to you a professional evaluation and recommendations for the Hilton Parkway Gateway Corridor. We'd like to hear your feedback today, Town Council members, on the direction and evaluation of the recommendations. And then ultimately our goal is, as we all know, that the collective goal is to establish a project roadway position that is best for Hilton Head Island, inclusive of the Stony community. With this Gateway project, we seek to enhance the corridor through public realm improvements and policy decisions. And we seek to create a cohesive identity and reflect the desired image of our island. And of course, it's important that we all think through balancing land use and mobility centered around the roadway functionality. So how do we improve safety and access to and from Hilton Head Island? How do we maintain and transform our roadside into a safe, accessible, viable areas in the years to come? And you'll hear from Sean and Brian. They'll provide a comprehensive summary of the work to date. And at the completion of today's meeting, it's very important to know going into today's meeting, we still have a lot more work to do. We need to continue to refine our recommendations and project design. We need to keep the lines of communication open with DOT and Beaufort County. And that we need to understand public comments received from DOT, but we also, and most importantly, need to understand DOT's response to those public comments. And so we just received those public comments, but we still don't have DOT's response to those public comments. So again, lots more work to do, but I'm excited today to present to you our findings to date. It's inclusive of your recommendations and guidance along the way. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Before we go to Sean, how we're going to do this today is that Sean's going to talk, Brian's going to talk, and then we'll take questions from the public, and then we'll take questions from the council after that. Just so Brian and Sean can get through with the whole presentation.
Okay.
Okay, yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mark. Mayor, council, citizens. Mark's done a great job of identifying the goals and things that we still need to do. I'd like to provide a recap of the work that's done to date. Town council created a 278 or Windmill Parkway Gateway Corridor Task Force. That task force held 25 public meetings to gain input from project stakeholders in the community. The task force developed guiding principles that were adopted by town council and provided the SCDOT to influence the preferred alternative and design elements that would shape the final project. The town and county jointly approved sponsoring an independent engineering evaluation of the SCDOT project. HDR, guided by the oversight committee, jointly approved by town and county councils, completed an evaluation of alternatives, traffic and modeling assumptions, intersection treatments, and made recommendations. SCDOT, at the request of the local community and project partners, added creative design resolution to the project team to add professional skills and capabilities to enhance bridge and built environment architecture. The town contracted with MKSK to gain professional expertise and capabilities to develop a corridor plan to balance mobility issues with land uses and provide key project enhancements and recommendations. The town also contracted with HDR to provide additional professional expertise and capabilities to do a deeper dive with engineering evaluation and support for alternative concepts and treatments to validate feasibility and provide technical support in reaching implementable solutions. The project team has evaluated the information released in the environmental assessment and participated in the SCDOT public hearing and has held virtual and in-person meetings with SCDOT and their team to work with them to collectively understand opportunities and constraints in aligning our efforts. The project team has met on multiple occasions with landowners and stakeholders and has held several public meetings, including 3 open houses, to gain input and receive feedback on alternatives currently offered by SCDOT and locally by the town and MKSK. The project team has also reviewed dozens of correspondences from citizens and interest groups to understand their perspective, including their support or concern for the project process, our current recommendations on the table from SCDOT and the town. Today, we are here before town council and the community once again to share the status of where we are in terms of shared learnings, key project enhancements, and recommendations. And with that, I'll ask Brian Kinzelman, who we all know with MKSK, to share the presentation and to continue our discussion. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Sean. See if I can get this technology right. Mayor, council members, citizens, thanks again for having me. My name is Brian Kinzelman, Senior Principal with MKSK. I'm joined today by 2 of my colleagues, at least Barrett Armstrong and Brad Strader, who have been instrumental and intimate in all of that. Sean did a great introduction for this, so I'm just going to blast through. These are recommendations to date. Mark summarized where we are in the process, but we are, let me see if I can get this to move. There we go. First and foremost, the objective behind this local study is to use local knowledge to create a community-based solution and enhance DOT's preferred alternative. That has been our charge. We've had delivered to us that preferred alternative, and our goal has been to improve that and make that as island specific as we could. So we've evaluated that preferred alternative. We're recommending enhancements to create a legitimate gateway to the island and improve the quality of life, not just mitigate the damage done, as it were, by construction, but to actually improve the quality of life, and not the least of which is the Stony neighborhood through which this corridor passes. So today, we're going to review that draft set of recommendations. The public and council have seen most of these heretofore. We've refined them over the course of the past months. We've been at this now for, Sean, 4 or 5 months, I do believe. Time flies, right? We want to share with you what we've heard from the community. Sean, again, summarized that quite well. We had great input from the community. We heard loud and clear what people's feelings were, and then discuss our next steps. The guiding principles as the corridor committee had put together. The first one is really DOT's goal and principles, and that is to improve and fix the transportation issues as they are perceived to and through the island. To that, though, is the quality of life for the island and everyone affected by the construction and by the traffic itself. And thirdly, to create a gateway to this magnificent community. This is one of the premier communities in the country, one man's opinion. I don't think I'd get much argument, certainly on the East Coast. The magnificent environment and the water bodies are really our calling card. How do we protect those? So again, Sean ticked off these. I won't repeat these, but we had numerous contact points, not only with leadership, with council, but with the public as a whole. I want to acknowledge the role that the town staff played in this, including the town manager, Sean, Darren, as the town's traffic engineer, have done a lot of hard lifting on this, and it's greatly appreciated. What we heard in general terms from the community, everybody's in agreement. We need an attractive gateway to the island, a high level of aesthetics to complement this magnificent natural environment. Those aesthetics largely will be dealt with at the future design phases of the project. Right now, we're dealing with alignments and larger concepts. Consider the impacts on all residents. Again, emphasis on the Stony neighborhood. Use of smart technology so we can efficiently move traffic. This technology exists. We haven't used it heretofore. We need to in the future. Keep speeds at a reasonable level. This is not a super highway. This isn't even a highway. It is a parkway. It's a surface road on a very sensitive environmentally bent island. Concerns about limiting left turns on Squire Pope. We'll get into the intersection designs, but DOT has had some alternate thoughts on those movements. We heard loud and clear from the Hilton Head Plantation populace that those movements on Squire Pope are very important to them, understandably. The desire to enhance pedestrian and bicycle facilities, not just place sidewalks behind curbs, but to make safe and attractive and useful accommodations for vehicles and people other than automobiles. Bridge design that fits the character. This is a piece of bridge architecture, not a piece of strictly bridge infrastructure. We need to design for what we need, not over-design for any hypothetical future capabilities. We'll talk about that a little bit later relative to DOT's projections. Over time, we need to coordinate the signage, the landscape, possibly an art program, everything down to the fine-grained human level detail of a corridor. This is civic design. This isn't just transportation design. And then Windmill traffic signal. We heard loud and clear, specifically from the Windmill Harbor folks, that they need a traffic signal at the Parkway. And more. Probably wondering what the more was. Though not our charge, a couple of alternative concepts have come to our attention. We thought it was important to broach those with the public and with council. The first one we call the Bridge Rehabilitation Scheme. And the concept and questions have been raised about, gee, there's really one bridge that needs to be replaced. Should we really be replacing 4 bridges? So this concept suggests that we build 2 eastbound lanes and 3 westbound lanes. And that is intentional to control the growth of the island over time. We don't want to choke traffic, but this is not a super highway at the other end of that spectrum as well. Maximize the bridge lifespan and maybe minimize some taxpayer burden. Again, there's still useful life left in 3 of these 4 bridges. And this concept suggests maybe we take advantage of that. Continue to create a positive expression of the Parkway, especially through Jenkins Island, where the town, we have the luxury of geography owned by the town. We can take advantage of that. And then the limitations of turning motions left turn motions through specifically Jenkins Island and Stony neighborhood to improve those travel times. So from an engineering standpoint, as suggested, this is 3 lanes westbound, 2 lanes eastbound. It does, though, result in saturated flow. What does that mean? That means a lot of automobiles, stacked nose to tail through some of those key travel times. Restrictions to traffic movements, turning motions, left turn motions are necessary to maintain that traffic flow. This 2-lane eastbound would preclude a traffic signal at Windmill Harbor. There just isn't enough lane capacity to allow for stacking to satisfy a signal without causing traffic to back up over the bridges. The existing bridges must be modified. There's, as they say, no free lunch. Even if we preserve those bridges and take advantage of their useful life, they still need some work. So that has cost implications as well. Skull Creek Bridge approaching Pinckney will require some wetlands impacts to make all of that circulation work. That's unintended damage, but that is parcel of this scheme. But what does take advantage of is the fact that we've got less pavement and we take advantage of more town ground to create more of an experience. From a performance standpoint, moving automobiles, this results in additional 9 to 10 minute delay. That's based on our traffic engineers, HDR's traffic engineering analysis against what DOT has forecast in the future. So it does cause more delays, more traffic and time travel. During non-peak hours, left turns would be allowed in both directions, but that would be restricted at certain times of day. There's multiple bridge redundancy. So for emergency evacuations, that is certainly a positive. If we do repair those existing bridges that remain, we take advantage of 30 to 35 years of useful lifespan within those bridges. Now, from a logistical standpoint, this is a bit more complex than the DOT scheme. That would likely add about 2 more years of construction and design time to the project. I think over time that with that additional time, we'd be eating into any cost savings that there may have, some of the cost savings that could be realized. Restricted left turn motions are very difficult to enforce. It can be done with signage, can be done with physical barriers and extensive signage. Nonetheless, it's an enforcement issue. Left turn lanes that would be diverted are going to cause folks to continue downstream, and that has implications to those downstream intersections, specifically Gumtree and beyond, for those wanting to make those left turn motions into Hilton Head Plantation. So there are positives and there are negatives, as you would expect with any concept. The cost, again, one of the keys to this concept would realize a $20 to $40 million savings on the bridge construction compared to what DOT has estimated. But again, the extended timeline might start to eat into those cost savings a bit. In cross section, these upper sections show the Skull Creek Bridge, the high level bridge, and its conversion into 3 lanes westbound and the shared use path, and then the new 2-lane bridge eastbound onto the island. The 2 lower sections are westbound Mackey Creek Bridge, again 3 lanes. The shared use path switches to the north side of that bridge at Pinckney, and we've got a new bridge eastbound over Mackey Creek, 2 lanes. So new bridges and old bridges, all in different configurations. Legitimate concept, given the maybe the desire to, I'm sorry, I'm messing up my pages. the desire to have more control, another tool in the toolbox relative to island growth, and also to save legitimate taxpayer dollars. So the second concept that has come to our attention is what we're calling the grade separation concept, and that is to create highway construction, roadway construction akin to the Cross Island, literally all the way from Moss Creek to the Cross Island split with no interruptions, no intersections. This is a shot what that looks like through the Stony neighborhood. Again, this is 3 lanes in each direction. It would prioritize unimpeded traffic flow. So for those going with speed to the south end of the island, this will get you there. Eliminates all traffic signals through Stony. It does represent some significant property impacts in the Stony neighborhood just due to the real estate necessary to make this work. What this does suggest is that there are 2, possibly could be done with 1, overpass bridges. You would have exit and entry ramps as you do on limited access highways. You would have backage roads that interconnect those bridges, connect Squire Pope to Wild Horse, Chamberlain to Spanish Wells, and that's where the east-west circulation happens. North-south passes over the bridges. There are no signals or intersections along the route. In larger scale, the red dash lines and the pink shading suggest the approximate limit of property disturbance. These bridges are passing over the roadway. They require retaining walls, embankment, transition grades, interconnected roadways. Those all have impacts on real estate. So there's a vertical element to what we're looking at in 2 dimensions. So again, the performance of this improves the mainline flow. It likely increases congestion downstream, again, likely to the Gumtree intersection. This provides an atypical routing for people wanting to get north and south. You're having to get off at an exit ramp, cross a bridge, maybe even double back as it were to get on your assigned roadway, but it's all with unimpeded traffic flow relative to signals on the main line. The cost and logistics of this, again, as I mentioned, there's some significant land disturbance due to this roadway construction. That's through the Stony neighborhood, probably the most sensitive, in fact, the most sensitive ground of the whole project. It would expand the project schedule and budget. Certainly for these elevated crossings, that is expensive construction. The benefit to this is free and safe passage from east to west. That's the benefit of this grade separation. We felt it was important to bring those alternate concepts to your attention. That was not our charge to reconsider all of the precursors to DOT's work, but those were brought to our attention, felt to have some legitimacy and important to share with the community. Again, our charge has been to create a parkway and not a highway. We can move automobiles safely and efficiently, as does a highway, but we need to accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. We need to create a meaningful gateway. We can satisfy all of those issues. A summary of our key recommendations is, again, to create that memorable gateway, long-term vision for cyclists and pedestrians, eliminate raised curbs in the medians where possible. Let's use those medians as we do elsewhere on the island for drainage and for vegetation and for breakdown when necessary. Consolidate drives and curb cuts, reduce property impacts to the extent possible, especially through the Stony neighborhood. Design intuitive intersections, and I'll come to that intersection design in a moment, so that we're not confusing not just our residents, but our visitors as well. incorporate design features that calm the traffic and reduce the speeds. We can move automobiles at reasonable levels with reasonable times. We do not have to create a speedway here. And then utilize smart intersection technology and signal technology everywhere on the island. That would be, certainly would be wise. Relative to pure traffic movement, the traffic recommendations are 14-foot minimum non-motorized lane over the bridge with some viewing. Right now, the DOT bridge has a 10-foot wide path. We think something wider than that to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians and to take advantage of these magnificent views of the deep water are important. This is not a new concept. It's used throughout the world. 11-foot travel lanes versus 12-foot travel lanes and a 40 to 45 mile an hour design speed. Safe pedestrian and bicycle access onto Jenkins, which does not exist today. Variable median width so that we can calm traffic and provide real estate for aesthetic treatment and landscape. Smart signals, eliminate the confusing DOT U-turn devices. Again, I'll come to that in a moment. Eliminate median curbs where possible for all the reasons stated previously, and reduce as many curb cuts and provide alternate access points for some of the commercial and residential properties, specifically in Stony. The study area, as I said, starts at Moss Creek on the west and goes to the Cross Island on the east. We've broken that down into 4 segments, and I'll speak to each of those independently relative to recommendations du jour. First, with Moss Creek. As you see it today, we've got the Bluffton Parkway Flyover, existing commercial development on both sides of 278, existing gas station and informal market at the Flyover. We think there may be a better solution here. Our local alternatives suggest that we tie Fording Road into the Moss Creek intersection, eliminate that curb cut that is underneath the Flyover, be intentional about a market pavilion where the service station is, that likely is not a highest and best use for that site. And there's great commercial infill opportunities as well that are of benefit, not just to the Bluffton and the Moss Creek residents, but to islanders as well. In a larger plan view, you can see how Fording Island Road would extend behind this retail, tie into Moss Creek, also into this commercial development that is, I just lost that screen, sorry. For some reason, I just went blank, folks.
Ryan, this is Krista. I have your presentation pulled up if you'd like me to pull it up for you.
That'd be great. I don't know where this went.
Okay.
Hold on, Krista. There it is. It's back, I think.
Okie dokie.
Thank you, dear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. Doggone it. It just went again.
Yeah.
I'm back. Oh my. Oh my. Krista, maybe.
Brian, we can still see it. We see Moss Creek preliminary local alternatives.
I do not. Let me. There it is. I got it now, fellas. Thank you. And gals.
Sometimes stopping and starting again helps on this.
There we go. Here we go. There we go. Now onto the bridge section. Again, what we see today over Skull Creek are 2 bridges, one of which has got some, actually 1 bridge over Skull, 2 over Mackey. We've got 1 bridge that is deficient. We've got no pedestrian accommodations or bicycle. We've got no shoulders for breakdown lanes. As we all know, what we do have are magnificent views to the water and the island beyond. DOT has suggested that we have 1 bridge deck, remove the rest of the bridges. That's a wide bridge. It's 112 feet wide just for vehicle movements, and a 10-foot wide multi-use trail with a concrete barrier separating pedestrians and bicyclists from moving lanes of traffic. Breakdown lanes on both sides of those 3 lanes of moving traffic. This local alternative suggests the widening of that multi-use trail, the introduction of overlook areas, scenic overlooks, and respites for people riding their bikes or walking. That's a long haul, certainly from the island to the mainland, and to create 2 separate bridges. So we're not looking at 110 feet of pavement, but 2 smaller structures with minimizing the lanes as much as can be done practically, and possibly having 1 breakdown lane, not 2. That just reduces the amount of suspended concrete over the water. On to Jenkins Island as that touches down on terra firma. There are no pedestrian and bicycle options today. We've got safety concerns at Jenkins Road and Windmill Harbor. The good news is we've got a lot of town-owned ground that's on the north side of 278. That's what we see today with the Jenkins Road coming out to 278 from the RV campground, which is a troublesome intersection. Certainly, we've heard from Windmill Harbor folks of the difficulties at that intersection as well. So we can, DOT alternative has minimized the median. They've minimized the buffer between any sidewalk or trail as well. If we provide that pedestrian bicycle accommodation, it's got to be attractive, it's got to be safe. We feel it needs to be separated from 3 lanes of 45-mile-an-hour traffic. So what we have suggested is take advantage of town-owned ground, move the entire alignment of the new Parkway to the north so that the eastbound lane would take over where the westbound lane is today, giving us more green space and breathing space between Windmill and the new Parkway, and allowing for a multi-use trail to pass through green space. It also allows us to capture in this varying median some of the mature vegetation that exists today as part of the town-owned property. And it allows for us to put a new connecting roadway behind the utility corridor and eliminate the intersection at Jenkins Road. Here's a different angle showing just that of Jenkins Road coming over to Heinrich Circle and then coming to a signalized intersection at Windmill Harbor. That is a signal that would be, from what our traffic engineers are suggesting, would be 96, 97% in the green for the east-west travel. So there wouldn't be much stoppage of that traffic, but it does have turn lanes. What it does not have is crosswalks for pedestrians. So we're discouraging, prohibiting pedestrian crossing there, which allows us to speed up the signal, as it were. You can see how the median is undulated and allows for us to capture some of that mature vegetation into the roadway system itself. At a different view, panning out a little bit, the new bridges are going to be built to the south of the existing bridges. And this is a longer curve coming downgrade to the Windmill intersection, which would be signalized. That is a DOT recommendation as well. We've eliminated this Jenkins Road curb cut. Again, it finds itself to the intersection, and you can see how we've got more green space between 2 ribbons of roadway, not 6 lanes of traffic and wall-to-wall pavement. I think this is a much more acceptable Parkway experience. The Windmill Harbor intersection, as you see it today, is not signalized. We've got limited queuing length at the gatehouse. There's opportunities to create buffers for sidewalk. Also, maybe expand this, consider a safer intersection relative to traffic coming off the bridge. These enhancements suggest that we continue the median to the intersection, not bringing those lanes of traffic together. We prohibit, discourage crosswalk traffic here. A multi-use trail can pass underneath the bridges a little bit further to the west. So north side and south side can connect one to the other, just not crossing at this intersection. And it provides for, again, more stacking coming out of and into the gatehouse at Windmill. Moving into the Stony neighborhood. Again, there's not much romance to the roadway as you see it today at 78 feet of existing right-of-way. Walkways directly behind the curb, very unattractive and unappealing, one man's opinion. Some separation seems to be in line. There's direct driveway curb cuts onto 278. Again, there's no buffer between those pedestrian accommodations. DOT has suggested to expand that right of way to 130 feet, all to the north. There's no buffer on the sidewalk on the south, 12 feet of travel lanes and a 10-foot multi-use trail, and really cutting into the front yards of the residents on the north side. This alternative suggests that we reduce the lanes of travel to 11 feet, reduce the acceleration lane, if not eliminating it coming out of Squire Pope. It's probably the former in the westbound dimension, but to truncate that before it adversely impacts some of the residents. Provide for 10-foot multi-use trails on both sides of the road and separate them from the roadway itself. And to enhance the median. Right now, there is no median through Stony, and to have at least some without further impacting these residents that's the sweet spot. At a larger view, again, this suggests that there's now multi-use trail connection to Jenkins. There's private driveway connection if those residents so choose not to have direct curb cuts out to the Parkway. There's a potential for backage road that would connect Old Wild Horse and Squire Pope. That needs to be carefully considered relative to the environment and also to property ownership. But one of the keys to this is the south side of the Parkway, and that is the opportunity to create a beautiful park and open up views to Jarvis Creek, and to use that park to showcase the Gullah Geechee heritage and history of the place. This isn't the only Native Islander community on the island, but it's the first one that our visitors come to. We think it would be important for them to drink in the culture and the history of the place while they may be stopping at a visitor center. What could be farmers market, could be Native Islander crafts and goods and retail sales, and create something that speaks to the culture of the place, not just another piece of roadway. The intersections has been key to the DOT problem solving. The challenges of the existing Squire Pope intersection is a single lane left turn in that eastbound direction. You can see some of these traffic counts projections in the box to the upper right. 2018 in the AM peak hours, 4,300 automobiles. That's expected to be in 2045, 6,000. So this problem is not going away. Now, there may be debate as to how those projections unfold over time and what other devices the town can put in place to minimize traffic, but it is probably fair to assume that traffic will increase. So I think there's opportunities to make this more intuitive. The DOT has suggested that there are no left turns eastbound on Squire Pope, and that those wishing to get onto Squire Pope need to, going to this upper right diagram, need to go past the intersection, go up to Old Wild Horse at a traffic signal, make a U-turn, and come back to Squire Pope and then head northbound. We think introduction of such a traffic motion is confusing at best, and we think there's a better solution. These enhancements suggest that we have 2 lanes, 2 left turn lanes, again, reducing the lane width from 12 to 11, provide for smart signaling, allow those left turns to happen onto Squire Pope, so we're not pushing the traffic problem further down the line and dealing with traffic where it needs to go, but safely, and move the trails away from and onto town-owned grounds so that we've got bicyclists and pedestrians away from the intersection. At Old Wild Horse, which is part and parcel of the previous intersection, presently there are no left turn motions eastbound. DOT has suggested that we put in a signal there, and not only do we allow left turns, but we allow for this U-turn. What DOT is suggesting that Old Wild Horse is 2 lanes, 1 way in that northeast direction. We think that's introducing an awful lot of traffic to a roadway that isn't sufficient in capacity. It's a neighborhood street, and it introduces another signal to the entire course, which seems counterintuitive relative to what we're trying to solve, and that is elimination of signals and curb cuts. So our enhancements suggest that there is no new traffic signal, and we maintain the existing layout, not allowing those left turn motions, maintain Wild Horse as a 2-way neighborhood street and not divert any more traffic onto it. What that then does is bring us to Spanish Wells, the next intersection to the east. There's no landscape buffer. This is a large intersection, as we all know, as it stands. There is peak hour backup onto Spanish Wells. You can see the projections upper right as well, 4,100 3 years ago to almost 5,700 in 2045. So our recommendation is that DOT's recommendation is that we eliminate left turns at both of those intersections and use the U-turns and the jug handles, as they call them, that were shown as part of the Old Wild Horse intersection. So if you do not get off at Old Wild Horse and make that motion to the north, you find yourself at Wild Horse, you cannot make that left turn, and you've got to find another way to get to parts to the north, which is likely down to Gumtree. We're suggesting that we allow left turn motions, but we add turning capacity at that intersection in all directions, and provide for a multi-use trail that is separate from the road all the way over to the Coastal Discovery Museum and to that beautiful park. So we're separating pedestrians and vehicles. We're making these as attractive and as efficient as we can, but not introducing those U-turn devices as DOT had suggested. So again, this is Stony taken as a whole. You can see that we've got a modest median through the narrowest part coming off the causeway. We've got enhanced crossings at Squire Pope and Chamberlain. We've got this connection from Chamberlain all the way to Spanish Wells through the parkland, the town-owned property, and a potential for a backage road through some configuration, Old Wild Horse to Squire Pope. And most importantly, no changes to Old Wild Horse, prohibiting those eastbound left turn motions. In all of this, we want to make sure that we connect all the destinations and all the trail system throughout from east to west, providing for new trails, connecting to existing walkways, and making sure that we got pedestrian and bicycle travel comfortably and everywhere. Now, sorry for all the words, but what do all those graphics mean to you all? This is a summary of those recommendations that I just went through that start at the east and move to the west. And that is to encourage and support that Moss Creek area improvement. That is not part of Hilton Head Island, but I think we can be supportive and work with the county and other private owners to make that as successful as possible. Establish the gateway experience at the west end of the Mackey Creek bridges as you come underneath eastbound, underneath the Cross Island or the Bluffton Parkway. That is where we want to establish the welcome to Hilton Head Island experience. Certainly nothing that literal, but take advantage of landscape, icons, public art, lighting, comprehensive signage. That's really where the experience begins. That's your first real view of the open water with the islands beyond. It's magnificent as it is, and I think we can improve upon that. Reduce the bridge mass with 2 separate bridges. Reduce the bridge lane width. Provide for a 14-foot wide bicycle zone with overlooks. Pay attention to bridge design and details as this project moves forward. Again, this is not a highway. This is a piece of bridge architecture. It needs to look that way from afar. It needs to look that way from the seat of an automobile or a bicycle. Once we get to terra firma, reduce those lanes of traffic to 11 feet to further calm traffic and to reduce impacts on property. Eliminate raised curbs and the medians. Let's encourage that natural vegetation as we have elsewhere throughout the Parkway. Vary the median widths for all the reasons previously mentioned. Take advantage of the town-owned property for sake of these Parkway improvements. We can take the roadway into some of that ground and make for a much better experience. Jenkins Island consolidation of intersection, smart technology in our signals. Go back to traditional turning motions, intuitive intersections through Stony. Eliminate those, what we feel are confusing U-turn options. Eliminate left turn traffic onto Wild Horse in that eastbound direction. Reduce curb cuts at every turn as best we can and provide safer access for the private property owners. Provide trails on both sides of the roadway. Create a comprehensive and comfortable bikeway and pedestrian system that doesn't exist heretofore. Create a new park south of the Parkway, as we call it, the Gullah Geechee Park. What its actual program and name is yet to be determined. But I think there's a great opportunity again to add a visitor center to that park, and let's intentionally showcase the heritage that makes Hilton Head what it is. Open at every turn, open and encourage views to the water. Volunteer growth has mitigated some of those. As we move into final design, the town is going to have to pay special attention to signage, landscape, public art, architecture. The devil's in the details, as they say. And at this juncture, we're dealing with large concepts, but that detail is going to be critically important to success. Lastly, in Stony, we've fallen in love with that neighborhood through this project. We think there is a great opportunity for Stony to be what Stony wants to be over time. It can't be a dictated concept. It needs to be a grassroots concept. And this is a great opportunity. It's been discussed by many of you in the past for a development corporation to help with that Stony advancement, not just Stony, but other places on the island, maybe doing the development things that government can't do or private enterprise is possibly unwilling to do. but there's opportunities in the Stony neighborhood, fine people, beautiful property, and a lot of history and heritage. So our next steps, I know I went through that other than my technical glitches as quickly as is possible. This council discussion today is obviously very meaningful. As Mark said, we've got the DOT public comments, but not their responses to those comments. Town needs to coordinate further with Beaufort County. We, the consultant team, that includes HDR, will be finalizing our recommendations once those first three items happen. And then at the end of the day, town council will have to work with your project partners and provide a position to DOT moving forward. With that, I thank you. I'm sorry it took so bloody long, but that was a lot of stuff. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Sean, I'll throw it back to you if you care to MC.
Here's my citizens. Okay, this time we're gonna have appearance by citizens. Krista?
Yes, sir. I will go ahead and pull in the parents by citizens. We have 10 people signed up for today, so be patient and we will get through them all.
Thank you.
So the first one we have is Mr. Skip Hoagland. Mr. Hoagland? Mr. Hoagland, are you on the line? Mr. Hoagland, you need to unmute, sir. All right,
Okay.
sir, I'm going to go on and move to Mr. Christian. Mr. Christian? Mr. Christian?
Hello?
Thank you, Krista. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Christian?
Can you hear me, Krista?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Krista. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much.
Sir, we need you to turn down your video in the background. Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Krista. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much.
Sir, we need you to turn down your video in the background. Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, he's muted.
Thank you so much.
Sir, we need you to turn down your video in the background. Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you.
He's muted.
Thank you so much.
Sir, we need you to turn down your video in the background. Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, thank you. All right, Krista, we're having some problems with this.
Okay, it sounds as though you have your Facebook feed on in the background, sir. Okay,
All right, hold on a second. Let me see if I can get out of the,
it sounds as though you have your Facebook feed on in the background.
all right, how's that?
That is better. Go for it, sir.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, appreciate the opportunity. Our board of directors, I'm representing Hilton Head Plantation, has looked at the SCDOT plan, and we've sent comments to the members of SCDOT and their team, as well as copied the mayor and council on that plan. And we are not in favor of that plan, as you are well aware. We've looked at the town's consultant's recommendation, and although not perfect, our board of directors and the feedback we are getting from our citizens is overwhelmingly much more positive to the plan provided by the town's consultant. The Parkway concept, replacing those left-hand turning movements and making this into an experience coming onto the island and recognizing that the residents of the North End, both the native island communities and all the folks who occupy the North End, need to be considered and not make this an expressway down to the South End. We all realized that there is a balance between tourism, workers, and residents. And we also need to realize that the tourism pays for the lifestyle that we, the residents, enjoy very much. So we want to make that balance complete, but not overlook our good residents. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do this right. If it takes a little bit more time, that obviously needs to be considered. This needs to be an experience coming on to the island, but also needs to be very, very, very practical. I'm not going to take up much more of your time, but just know that the board of directors has looked at this extensively, has vetted this with many of the citizens, and I know you've heard from many of the citizens of Hilton Head Plantation, but this does serve the entire population all the way from Windmill Harbor, Squire Pope Road, and the folks all the way to Gumtree Road. And we thank you for your time and your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Sir, the next one we have to speak is Risa Prince. Ms. Prince, are you on the line? Ms. Prince?
Krista, Ms. Prince is on mute.
I know, I've unmuted her.
Okay, thank you.
Risa, are you on the line? Risa?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the time to speak today. With all due respect, SCDOT's proposal, even with MKSK modifications, still fails to deliver against the guiding principles that you as town council adopted. Number one is traffic congestion. The analysis from the Southern Environmental Law Project supports what the mayor's been saying all along, that we must consider the impact to the side streets through William Hilton Parkway and the Cross Island all the way to Sea Pine Circle. It's clear that the proposed changes within the corridor will only move congestion elsewhere, and that a 6-lane corridor will not deliver meaningful traffic relief throughout the island. Number two, improving safety and quality of life. While the MKSK modifications deliver some improvements, there are still significant safety issues for pedestrians and cyclists trying to cross William Hilton Parkway, plus the substantially widened footprint and the right-of-way expansion keeps all of the burden on the Stony community. Environmental resiliency, negative impacts, and enhancing Pinckney Island. SCDOT's plan ignores climate change and rising sea levels during the life of the project. Wetland impacts have not been mitigated according to the Hilton Head Island Code, and rather than protecting it, this plan cuts directly into the Pinckney Island National Wildlife Refuge. 4, the aesthetically pleasing gateway that reflects Hilton Head Island values. MKSK's work delivers the safer functional pathways along the corridor for pedestrians and cyclists, and that certainly represents the enhanced entrance character that we're seeking. As Coyne and others have been saying all along, we still need a value benchmark for this proposal. You can't decide if the proposed project provides enough bang for the buck without evaluating a lower cost alternative. The base alternative, including a replacement of the deficient bridge, retaining 4 lanes, adding the smart intersection technology, enhancing pedestrian and cyclist pathways and crossings, and including the iconic entrance at dramatically lower cost and community impact needs to be analyzed. So we recommend 3 immediate actions to be taken by Town Council. Expand MKSK's scope to include analysis of the base alternative. 2, agree on decision criteria, including cost, impact to residents, workers, visitors, businesses, the environment, and delivery of our guiding principles, and then use them to determine which alternative actually delivers best value. 3, agree that a project of this significance requires more than a simple majority to move forward. Some of you might feel that MKSK's modifications sufficiently address SCDOT's deficiencies. Some of you, and a significant number of your constituents, still do not. This decision will permanently change Hilton Head Island.
Ms. Prince, thank you, ma'am.
Please do not move forward with a fractured town council vote.
Thank you, Risa. Mr. Hoagland? Mr. Hoagland? With that, we have Patsy Bryson, sir. Patsy Bryson?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, great. Thank you for your patience with technology. Great job, Krista. Patsy Bryson speaking on behalf of Coalition of Island Neighbors. We reviewed the slide deck of MKSK as of Friday afternoon. That was the only thing available to the public. We've seen a lot more information today, including a lot more improvements, but it is difficult to respond to the lengthy presentation at this time, so we will be commenting more in the future. The first challenge has always been that SCDOT's recommended preferred alternative is an absolute failure. Starting off with a failed traffic model and directed by a limited route and an expansion of 6+ lanes is difficult for anyone to try to overcome. And we want the council to remember that failed SCDOT alternative. The improvements we have seen before today from MKSK included the design of a parkway entrance, especially on Jenkins Island. There's some now improvements through Stony, but there's still an exceedingly difficult right-of-way expansion, even with MKSK's work, because the expansion is from 78 feet to 118 feet, which is a 51% increase in the right-of-way. That is not acceptable. The separation of multi-use trails and sidewalks from along the sides of the roadway is great, but the pedestrian crossings and bicyclist crossings, especially at the intersection of Spanish Wells and Wild Horse Road, as well as through Stony, are still dangerous. I have ridden my bicycle and walked my bicycle across that intersection at Spanish Wells, and I refuse to do it anymore. With the turnings there, it is too dangerous. That needs to be addressed. There's no overhead pedestrian or bicyclist crossings in Stony, despite the fact that the town council adopted the Stony Initiative Area Plan, which includes that as a goal and strategy. Including smart technology is exactly what the community has been asking for, so thank you for that. That must be included. Eliminating that crazy dangerous U-turn at Old House Old Wild Horse Road is definitely an improvement, and we need to keep that. We need to correct the SCDOT's flawed traffic model. You need to include a 4-lane option. The 5-lane option is still not acceptable. Separation of that incredible concrete structure, the bridge, is a market improvement. Keep working on that. There's still no end-to-end performance metrics and updated cost estimates for the town council to consider. That must be done. Finally, COIN has pursued a base alternative, and we have detailed that. The 2 new concepts promoted today or presented today, the alternative concept has some merit. The grade separation concept through Stony is a previous idea that the community has not yet accepted. That free-flowing traffic through Stony creates an expressway through Stony. The alternate roads around Stony would greatly impact property in that area, not all of which is owned by the town. That is a significant concern to the community.
Thank you, Ms. Bryson.
We urge you to do the steps that Risa Prince has urged. Thank you.
Next, we have Christopher Cliff. Mr. Cliff? And he dropped off the call. Next person will be Cindy Paulson, sir. Cindy Paulson. Ms. Paulson? Ms. Paulson, go ahead, please. Ms. Paulson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good
Ms.
afternoon.
Paulson?
Good afternoon. This is Cindy Paulson.
Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good
Ms.
afternoon.
Paulson?
I may have to
Good
turn.
afternoon. This is
You
Cindy.
need to turn your background noise off, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
good afternoon. I'm Cindy Paulson. I'm president of the Windmill Harbor Property Owners Association. Windmill Harbor has sent comments to the SCDOT with a copy to Town Council in Beaufort County. We very much support MKSK's recommendations and appreciate that they recognize the safety issue that we have at our intersection. We particularly support the smart technology traffic signal and the reduced speed. I believe enforcement will be the issue for the reduced speed as it has been in the past. Windmill Harbor hopes that the town council will support the recommendations of MKSK, particularly the signal at Windmill Harbor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson. Next, we'll have John Herron. Mr. Herron?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. This is John Herron. I've been a resident of Hilton Head Island since 2012, and I'm currently the president of the Hilton Head Plantation POA. In HHP, we have over 4,200 residences, 10,000 residents, which is approximately 1/3 of the registered voters for. We spent a lot of time looking at the SCDOT recommendation. We find that there's some inconveniences there. Timed light at Windmill Harbor, removal of left turns at key intersections, and introduction of a new light at Old Wild Horse Road left, which no one likes. It feels dangerous. So much of the traffic will not be expecting this radical design and will not know what to do with it. Concerns that people are going to die. It seems to penalize North End drivers. The pedestrian user experience on the bridge, it's dull, it's aesthetically bland, and the project seems to really be focused on getting non-residents down to Harbor Town, which is complemented with the SCDOT team using the Harbor Town Lighthouse as their logo for this project. We have spent time looking at the town of Hilton Head proposed Parkway. We love eliminating light and U-turn, that dangerous U-turn, allowing that we can do the left turns that workers, visitors, residents want to do. We like having the Windmill Harbor new lights switch to swim from timer activation to sensor activation, and the tremendous improvement in the pedestrian experience on the bridge with the addition of the bump outs and have some benches and shading, switching from a bland concrete wall to an architectural barrier. The bridge itself, we like the ideas, other than the pedestrian conclusion. This is a once in a generation experience and it must be done right. Our neighbor to the south, Savannah, has a marquee bridge. Charleston to the north has a bridge that makes an impressive statement. Hilton Head is one of the greatest destinations, not only for South Carolina, but the entire Eastern United States. And it's an imperative that everyone coming on or going off Hilton Head have not only a smooth transition, but one that leaves a pleasant, lasting impression. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Heron. Mr. Cliff, Christopher Cliff, please.
Hi, Krista, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. I'd just like to say that I think the presentation today has been very encouraging. I'd like to comment on the SCDOT preferred alternative. I attended 32 town committee meetings, tuned into all oversight committee meetings. I've read all SCDOT's publications, been to open house meetings, been to public presentations, and I'm still searching in all that material for the clear and obvious benefits to residents and the island of spending roughly $300 million. I can't see it. What I do see, yeah. Oh, right. Am I okay?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cliff?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Krista, I'd like to say that I've spent a lot of time attending meetings, reading SCDOT materials, and I'm very appreciative of the openness of the whole process. But looking through all those materials, I've yet to come across a clear and obvious benefit of spending $300 million to the island. What I do find is a proposal that doesn't even join the Cross Island Parkway, further piecemeal decimates the Gullah Geechee community, and actually adds further complications to already archaically controlled junctions. Okay, so what I have done, hello? Yeah, I've analyzed traffic data from January 2018 through to the end of August of this year. Prior to December 2019, SCDOT data for site 0035 is unreliable, and you have to make numerous adjustments in order to have a credible database. So I think their projections, let alone their analysis of the past, are disputable. And if there is a growth in visitors to the island, I'm afraid they don't appear to be arriving in vehicles. It's flatlining, even if you allow for the various poor weather, the leap year, or on various adjustments. So I don't think the volume demand is there for a 6-lane highway.
I'm here.
Now, also, I've recently returned from a 6-day visit to the Emerald Coast in Florida, between Panama City and Destin. And that area is being decimated by developers. Why is that happening? Well, they openly admit St. Joe owns 500,000 acres in Florida, and since 2019 has started numerous major projects seriously impacting the local community. Why have they done it? Because they openly admit the state improved the infrastructure, in particular the US 98, and the local community improved the local roads.
Thank you,
And that's
Mr.
opened the
Cliff.
floodgate, and that's going to happen to Hilton Head.
Next, sir, we'll call on Mr. Bear, Stephen Bear.
Okay, Krista, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. Go ahead, sir. Bear.
Yes.
Stephen Bear.
Yes, can you hear me, Krista?
Yes, I need you to turn off your background sound, please.
Okay, I'm turning my background off. Thank you. I've been watching this project for about 3 years now. I'm an engineer and I've studied traffic analysis of phone networks, and I understand the traffic flows in this network. I'm not going to repeat my formal written comments, which I submitted early today, or the 24 pages we submitted to SCDOT, but just going to hit some highlights. First of all, I continue to hear people talk about connections to Cross Island Parkway, but I don't see them in the pictures. When I talk about connections, I mean engineered connections. They get around the bottlenecks of the splits and merges and dangerous connections to the Cross Island. Any plan has to have a good engineered and well-designed, efficient connection to the Cross Island Parkway. It's not a plan unless it has that. Secondly, any plan needs to have an end-to-end analysis of the traffic flows. For example, the throughput. SCDOT does it one intersection at a time and completely ignores the bottlenecking of the intersections and the backflow of one to the other. It needs to be done as a network and not one intersection at a time. I heard MKSK talk a little while ago about 96 or 97% efficiency of the Windmill Harbor Light. Frankly, I don't believe it. If you look at the highway capacity manual and the highway formulas, there's dead time, which has to be allowed for cars to slow down and then speed up again. If you had that dead time, I don't think you'll ever find a light in the country with that high in efficiency. So I think you need to get the efficiency numbers down correctly. And finally, the project scope must, as I said, include from the Moss Creek Lights to the Cross Island Parkway. This is a flaw that I see that SCDOT has made, and I think MKSK has made it again. I have your diagram on my screen right now. And there must also be an end-to-end quantitative and transparent analysis and comparison of plans. We know the SCDOT plan is terrible, and it appears from what I see, the MKSK plan is a step in the right direction. But no one has provided the public with the end-to-end throughput, the total cost, and a table which shows all the issues. And until you have that, you cannot have a comparison of plans. And I hope that the town and MKSK understand that. I think any university or business school or school of engineering would tell you the same thing. If one of my grad students presented a lab report with the plans that I've seen right now, I'd give them an incomplete because they haven't completed the quantitative analysis of the plan. And I'm speaking more than alone. I'm speaking for about 6,800 people in a petition that have very similar views. And by the end of the year, I'm sure we'll be in the 8,000 to 10,000 range. So please listen to us and please listen to the extensive materials we provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Mr. Hoagland? Mr. Hoagland, I'm going to try you one more time. All right, sir, that concludes appearance by citizens, sir.
Thank you, Christian. Before we go to council, I have a comment to make along the way. This has been a very learning process for me. It's been months and months at a time. I've learned a lot listening to council members, listening to them. We on?
We're on, but we are locked out of the video.
Well,
We're trying to get the host to allow us back into the video.
okay.
Is she working on it? There we go. Everybody's turning back on. And there, you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Camera on.
There you go.
I've heard public comments along the way. I like to make a comment on my own before we go to individual council members. This has been a learning experience. Every time you meet, I learn something else, which is really good. But I am leaning towards now, I haven't made up my mind, but I'm leaning towards 3 lanes each way in the bridge and 3 lanes each way on the road coming in. And I tell you that because I haven't made up my mind fully, but I'd like you to know which way I'm leaning. I will ask Mark after this meeting to take Brian's plan and any additional comments we have to the county. We're at the point now, Russ and the county have to be somewhere on the same page. And then following the county, I'll ask Mark to go to the plan that the county and the town have agreed upon somewhat to go to SDOT. And then what's left after that, we will set up a meeting with the secretary in Columbia for Mark, myself, and Tom Davis. The work has not been done on this side. Brian has a lot more to do. Each of the councilmen will have something to say to add on to the thing, correct it, make it better. But we have to move forward with some kind of a plan to the county so we can be on the same page with them. Because unless we get on the same page and figure out what our differences are and bring our differences back to the council here, we're never going to get anywhere, good, bad, or indifferent. So we have to see where the county and us are as far as the program goes. Then we have to go to SCDOT to discuss what we collectively have done. And then it's time to go to Columbia. But we will be in touch all the time before we make any decisions. And with that, I'd like to go into the council. Alex Brown, you're first, sir.
Mayor, excuse me for just a second. I didn't hear exactly what you said in the way you were leaning. Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. I'm leaning towards a bridge with 3 lanes each way and a roadway with 3 lanes each way.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for laying out the next steps here. I want to be clear that I truly appreciate us engaging with MKSK. What it's done is it's opened our eyes to the fact that we can do better. And I just want to take a step back here. I don't think that we as a council need to be taking the approach with SCDOT as far as a negotiation is concerned. We've adopted our guiding principles. We've hired a professional, and we are listening to our constituents. So for me, I'm not in a position to horse trade with other council members, with terms or right away. Not looking to horse trade with the county as far as what happens at Windmill Harbor. But I am interested in us as a council representing our citizens and being able to distinctly answer the question as to why we are doing this. We're not doing it because we're reacting to a plan that SCDOT has put in front of us. We are doing this because of the guiding principles that we have adopted. And that means improving the transportation issue on and off of Hilton Head requires more than a study through the appointed area of Moss Creek to Spanish Wells Road, then we need it. And we currently don't have it. Let's talk about end-to-end analysis. That's very important to us. Some will tell you that opening the bridge in the corridor to 6 lanes is going to help with our workforce issue. Well, I'm here to tell you that the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift on Hilton Head is one that we don't have workers for. It is no traffic problem coming on the Hilton Head at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's not that. You've heard it from many, this is a one in a lifetime opportunity here. And that is true, but it's not a one in a lifetime opportunity to fix what SCDOT has put in front of us. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to do the right thing for Hilton Head. So what I'm proposing, Mr. Mayor and Council, is that we simply say to SCDOT, no thanks at the moment. Because you're right, the work's not done. And again, not in a negotiation type manner, but this is a demand that we're going to do the right thing for our citizens here on Hilton Head. At the end of the day, whatever that is, we all, 7-0 vote is what I would imagine. We all agree that we are completely satisfying our guiding principles and completely doing the best thing for Hilton Head for the next 30 to 40 years. And right now, the SCDOT plan does not do that. I don't want us to be perceived as doctoring it up so that it does. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. That's my position at the moment. Thank you.
There we go. All right.
Ms. Hawkins? Bill, the mute.
Bill's on mute.
All right, am I on, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you are, sir.
Thank you. My take is a little different. I think any project, whether it's simple or complex, there has to be a starting point. And then that starting point is rarely, if ever, accepted as the final project. But a starting point also becomes a reference point. And that may be one of the hardest things to do, initiating a project of this magnitude. So where do we find us at this point in time? We find ourselves with a State Department of Transportation that has advanced a tentative plan that many of us take issue with, and for good reason. And so what did we do? We looked within ourselves as a town council, and what did we find? We found public spirited individuals that want to do the best thing for the community for the long term. But I, for one, and I think I can say this for the rest of my colleagues, lack the expertise in this very specialized field. So what did we do? We did the right thing. We went out and looked around the countryside and asked who is quite proficient in this subject matter, who has done this before, and whom would we be comfortable working with, challenging our own thinking and challenging in a respectful way, not a demanding way, with the South Carolina Department of Transportation. And both of us asked the question, how can we make this better? And I'm sensing from what I hear from my colleagues here and our town manager that refining early stage thinking, modifying direction that's been advanced at an early stage is not unusual. As a matter of fact, it's the norm. And I think we're at a point now where, and we've heard this from many people today, that Brian and MSK and HDR have really filled or are filling that void, that vacuum that we have in terms of experience in this matter. And what have they done? They have been, I think, sensitive, and there's many areas to be sensitive on this project. I think they're all apparent to all of us. They've been creative, and they've also been, I think, grounded in the practical economics of a project of this size. And so features that are guiding their thinking, and I'm getting this rather clearly, that it's emanating from Brian's experience, and it's emanating from our town manager's experiences, that yes, we want a very attractive gateway. Yes, aesthetics are important, but we're at a stage in this project where aesthetics will be dealt with at a later time, not right now, but just because they're not being addressed in specifics right now, doesn't mean they're going to be forgotten. I'm hearing that they're looking at designing a bridge that fits our character. I heard good things today about not one monolithic pour of concrete, but actually creating a two bridge access opportunity. I've heard some very thoughtful and creative ways to deal with Windmill Harbor. And in spite of what Mr. Barr said, I would trust the people that are out there making a living today as experts. And I believe them, and I'm comfortable with them. I think there's been a great deal of sensitivity as you leave Bluffton and approach Moss Creek to do some very creative things there, which have been shared with us. I'm sensing the awareness on Brian's part to create that gateway experience, which many of us have articulated. And that, again, is going to be a screen for ultimate approval. I've talked about the bridge mass, which is very important, reducing that. I've also heard about lane width reduction to have an inherent slowdown effect. I've heard about not only supporting the pedestrian lane, but supporting a 14-foot pedestrian lane. I've heard about eliminating raised curbs, a very important feature. And I've also heard about attention wherever possible to increase median width. I've also heard about the importance of trails, and wherever possible to have trails on both sides. I've heard about, in terms of design, do something so we can take advantage of our fantastic water views. And I've also heard, in a very sensitive and a creative way, let's do something at Stony. And there's one verb that they used, which I think is very important. It's not what we thought or we think or what we know is best for Stony. The words that were used were, let's encourage and ask Stony to author what could happen in their community. And let's give this a flair that has a historical bent to it. So people that are living here or people that are visiting here can use that as an entry point, a starting point on their vacation. And let's start off with the fantastic history of this island and the Native Island community. I've also heard the importance, and it will require creativity. It will require maybe help beyond ourselves, but to whatever happens at Stony, to create a economic engine that is something that the Stony people are comfortable with. So, I mean, I could go on, but my point is, we have, in my opinion, improved significantly since we brought in these experts, guided by our able town manager. And I think I'm ready to support sharing the leanings that are emanating from all of the conversations, some positive, some negative, some neutral. And let's go to Columbia with a small delegation. Let's share in a respectful way our view about what they did. And let's then share also the wisdom of the people that we've retained, the changing and refining thought process that each of us is getting with this project. And let's share this with our colleagues in Columbia, again, in a respectful way. And I think, from my experience, when you treat people like that, as colleagues, as people that are trying to do the best thing they can for a community, for a state, that good things happen. And so I'm leaning towards let's get this moving. We're not at the end of the process yet, but I think we have enough to start the next level of conversation with SCDOT. Thank you.
David?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank the town manager for sort of teeing up the process. I also wanted to thank the public for weighing in on this. And I'm going to call out one person in particular. John Herron used the term marquee bridge. That's the kind of thinking that we need in this community to levitate, to go to the top of the list. I truly appreciate the work that MKSK has been doing. Brian, Brad, and Barrett, great jobs. I like your recommendations. I heard things today that we have discussed in the past, 2 bridges and so on. But I have a question, Brian. I think it's to Brian. You enumerated almost 30 recommendations to make this a better plan. Width of roadway, Stony Development Corporation, bump outs on the bridge, and so on and so forth. Essentially, those are going in desires. What level of confidence should we on council have that those ideas are going to be supported by SCDOT? And I'll follow up after your answer.
Councilman, my opinion is, with the limited contact I've had with DOT, is that many of them will be a struggle and a negotiation. Some of them will be readily acceptable. Not all of them as a package would be accepted out of hand. So I think to Councilman Stafford's point, it would be down to negotiation in good faith with those folks in Columbia. If this is the basic parameter and the preferred alternative that the town wants to move forward with.
Well, that does respond to my concern. An analogy might be that an architect designs your house, you're not really satisfied with what it looks like, but you begin to make modifications to the size of windows and the doors and the paint color and the roof shingle and so on. And essentially what you're doing is trying to overlook the fundamental inconsistency of the design for your own personal use. And so I think that Alex, I again have to congratulate Alex Brown for the way he articulated his thoughts. I'm going to do it a little different way. I'm going to say that this is an unparalleled, once in a generation for the betterment of the island. And why do I say that? I think for two reasons. The first, the bridge can be the single most important growth management tool the town has, and we should take advantage of using it to manage future growth pressures. And secondly, this project will be the island's front door and welcome mat. First impressions do matter. It's all about a statement of who we are and what's important to us. It sends subliminally a message to people driving on the island. What are our expectations of them in driving onto the island? In contrast to SCDOT, the project is just another bridge. I want to emphasize that this is a community planning and a community preservation project of the highest importance, not a narrowly conceived, single-purpose road widening. My position at this time is we're not yet at a place to give a green light to the preferred alternative. I'll add that I'm withholding my support until the following concerns are addressed. The anticipated cost of 280 million, 300 million project produces significantly better reductions in travel times. That SCDO planning addresses points of congestion outside the study area, on and off the island. That SCDO growth projections segment user groups such as residents, commuters, tourists, and day visitors, and differentiate their travel needs and their relative importance to the island's economy. I believe this is a critical component of developing prudent and pragmatic growth management policies. And lastly, SCDOT acknowledges it's a rush hour problem and comes up with an appropriate scaled solution. Too much pavement today means more traffic tomorrow. I'll add one other thing. SCDOT bridges as designed are brutally out of scale with the island's brand and promote a very misguided image of island's capacity and values. I think we need to rethink those. My position at this time, and these are strategic overarching positions, and they dictate design alternatives falling out of them. And I recognize that there are secondary and tertiary decisions that come from them, but I think it's important for us to agree on those overarching town important positions. I'm taking the position that there should be two separate bridges, and I'm glad MKSK suggested that as well. One of two lanes onto the island, and that's to protect what we can't replace. And the other of three lanes which recognizes we have a legitimate and safety need to expedite evacuation on the island during storms and hurricanes. Secondly, and this mirrors what MKSK said, create Jenkins Island split roadway as an exceptional landscape gateway experience. This is the opportunity to introduce the island character and quality to everyone who drives on the island. It also gives Windmill Harbor some relief from traffic noise. I think it's important for us pragmatically and from a design standpoint to establish commuter traffic as a priority. Employees are essential. Without flexible hours, there has to be a balance recognizing their critical need. And employees include also contractors, delivery trucks, service vehicles, and so on, that every one of us relies on. They need to get to the island as efficiently as possible, but we shouldn't be building a road system for 24/7 kind of demand that they represent 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. And then finally, I'm glad to hear again, MKSK has included this in its list, establish a Stony Community Nonprofit Corporation. I believe this would bring national recognition, attention to Hilton Head for being innovative, doing things better, and solving a problem that other people have struggled and failed to solve. And Mayor, I have two final notes. One is that individual residents play an indispensable role in arriving at the optimal solution. And what do I mean by that? Given the importance of employees of all descriptions, contractors, service people, is it not reasonable to give them priority during rush hour? This would mean there'd be a community-wide benefit, but it may affect travel choices for some residents during those hours. Is that a reasonable trade-off for our community and for our individuals to make? And then lastly, town council certainly has a crucial role in managing traffic demand. It can reduce the need for more concrete by providing workforce housing on the island and viable public transportation to the island, and by using its bully pulpit to encourage private sector solutions. And council can, if it chooses, mitigate traffic congestion through its land use and zoning decisions, beach management and parking policies, and infrastructure investment. These elements are second-tier protections for the island's quality of life and managing the capacity of its physical and natural systems. A two-lane bridge is a first-tier protection, and I believe we should insist on it for the island's better future. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Tammy?
Thank you, Mayor.
First of all, Tammy, we're all glad you're okay and back with us.
Thank you very much. It was, thank you very much. And while you've opened the door for that, once again, I'd like to express my incredible gratitude to Fire and Rescue on Hilton Head Island. We have an amazing team with depth that is just exceptional and is not surpassed by any other community in this country. We are exceptional. We are the best. And Fire and Rescue points that out every single time they arrive at a scene. So thank you for the opportunity for me to say that. Sorry, and then moving on past that to this conversation, I first want to say we can do better, but it's not just a slogan, right? We can do better in everything that we're doing. And I think we've all gotten down the road a bit with this 278 Gateway Corridor project that started with a penny tax referendum that in the referendum words itself was to repair or replace the existing spans of the bridges to Hilton Head Island and other improvements between Moss Creek and Squire Pope at a cost of $80,000. Keeping that in mind, the purpose, SCDOT writes, of the project is to address structural deficiencies at the existing eastbound Macakay Creek Bridge and reduce congestion along US 278 from Moss Creek to Spanish Wells Road. Reduce congestion was replaced with the wording that it initially had started with increased capacity. The language changed because the pushback with the word increasing capacity was objectionable to all of us. Perhaps it means the same, but the wording change indicates an awful lot to many of us who see through some of what perhaps were agendas behind the scenes and not necessarily represented when the construction of the referendum and the marketing took place to garner the votes to pass it. And if you think about that, you can sit back and say, indeed, it was passed. It was approved. So we move on. But I want to point out something. There's a petition. There's a petition with 6,762 current signatures on it of the town of Hilton Head Island residents. That's a significant number of our 40,000 residents, correct? That's a significant number, only to grow. It's estimated that within a month or two, that number will be at 10,000 or better. Those are voices that we have to listen to because our job is not to go down the road to where we are now without thinking about where we came from and whether or not we're at a point in the road that maybe we got here in some odd way that's not beneficial to those who we serve. And that's what we do. Each and every one of us not only serve, but we work for those residents of the town of Hilton Head Island who have expressed themselves now through a petition, once learning of the full scope of what's behind this project. So we have guiding principles that were developed by a committee that was put together. Have we satisfied those guiding principles? Has anything that we're talking about fixed the transportation issues in the corridor in a way that improves the safety and quality of life for all residents, workers, and visitors to Hilton Head Island? Well, I think we can answer that question by the results of what the alternative, preferred alternative provides us. What is their outcome? It saves 15 minutes of time for commuters in the morning, and that's it. That's what it does. That's their outcome. So I'll let you answer it for yourself, but for me, our guiding principle number one has not been met. In fact, quite the contrary, I think that we have caused additional safety and quality of life issues for our residents, workers, and visitors to Hilton Head Island. Our guiding principle number two is to improve the safety and quality of life for residents of the neighborhoods and businesses directly impacted by the US 278 corridor. I don't think we've done anything along those lines, but in a positive manner. But if we look at it as a domino effect, we've in fact created a negative for those who live on this island, because we're all directly impacted. Everything flows from one to the next. You think maybe you're solving a problem in one area with these designs, and all you're doing is pushing the problem and the traffic further down the road into the communities, further into the island. Maybe we don't do that, but we don't know we don't do that because we haven't been able to calculate and judge what is the outcome if this project scope were to go to the Cross Island. Maybe that's the point that would give us a better direction as to whether or not we've addressed that and haven't necessarily had that domino approach to push it down 278 and impact all of us. Third, have a gateway to and from Hilton Head Island that the region will be proud of. Well, certainly, that's what we all want. We haven't heard nor seen anything that reflects a response to that guiding principle. I hear some folks talk about the magnificent bridges for Charleston and Savannah, that we need something impressive of structure. I'd ask us all to stop, for those who are listening, to think about what it is that is magnificent and impressive when you come onto Hilton Head Island. Is it not simply the vista, the water, the environment, the dolphins, the sailboats and boating activity on our waterways? That's impressive. So in terms of where we've come from, we have the referendum, the purpose of the referendum, and our guiding principles. I don't think we've gotten anywhere, frankly, except for perhaps taking steps back into what we all want and what our residents demand from us. So we haven't, so taking it from where we are and looking at the diagrams, and I want to thank MKSK for being part of this project, because what they describe for the island in general, in terms of a parkway and an enhanced bike ped pathway that's not up on top of our roads, is an improvement that I think Hilton Head needs anyway. That's money I think that we should consider, how we improve the area outside of the gates to be more welcoming and safe and enjoyable for all of our residents and visitors. So thank you to MKSK for bringing that dimension to this discussion. But I don't necessarily think that we are in a position that all of this work that we're doing needs to be focused and funneled on something that hasn't proven itself to be a worthy project to begin with. Nothing I just described, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who wants to, is to the benefit of any one of us. Financially, we're not set up for that. It wasn't indicated in the original referendum. I understand there's other monies and wonderful people out there who are working hard to find those monies to pull it in. But I can tell you, none of those monies ought to be thinking that they're coming from the taxpayers of Hilton Head Island with additional referendums or additional millage, et cetera, to be added to our tax dollars to provide us with something like this. So thank you to MKSK. Thank you to David Ames for the idea of that first tier of protection for the island, that reducing those two bridges to 2 or keeping them at 2 coming on the island is appropriate. We are looking for things that benefit our community, and that keeping it 2 lanes coming onto the island does just that and ought to be kept as such. So, who are we serving? What is our agenda? Whose agenda? Keep those things in mind. Keep the cost in mind. Keep our starting point in mind. Keep where it is that all this work and all these great ideas and amazing people with their creative ways of redoing the roadways and enhancing all of this, all that work that's being done. But why? Where did we start? Where are we going? There's a lot more to say about this. I can't support going forward with the concepts brought forth by SCDOT. Another given reason I think we've all read and understand, and I've alluded to it, is the overall cost. No one's broken this down for us. We have to have those numbers. We see the numbers of those people that are anticipated to come onto the island. Those are supposed to be very motivating factors. Oh my gosh, we need to get going. But we haven't considered all of our options, all of the various ways of modes of transportation that we're supposed to early on discuss, supposed to be part of this package of ideas, of solutions for congestion. Those haven't been explored. There's not been discussion, analysis, ideas presented, debated. So that's where I'm at. The residents of Hilton Head Island currently, and I believe far more than this, but by petition number 6,762 and many others are saying no. They do not want this. Start at the beginning. Look at where this all began. Answer those questions for yourselves. You can't come to a different answer than I've just presented. It's time to slow down. It's time to stop and think. And it's imperative that we move forward in a way that keeps our guiding principles well laid out in mind to have a positive outcome for each and every person on this island that we work for, that expect us to rise this and maintain this island at an excellence level, the shining spot throughout this country that people continue to want to flock to. We welcome them, and I thank you for your time for listening to me.
Mr. Lennox?
Thank you, John. I'll be brief. A lot has been said by my colleagues, and much of which I can align with, some of which I cannot. But I think one of the things that we all can agree on was early in this discussion, we recognized that we as a council did not have the skill set necessary to appropriately analyze and design and recommend a project of this scope. So while SCDOT and their engineers initially did the preliminary investigation of possible alternatives, the community suggested that we engage independent third-party engineering firm and a land planning firm. And we did that with HDR and MKSK. And I think I am becoming more comfortable in the engagement process that we have involved HDR and MKSK in. And we asked Brian and Brad and Barrett to make recommendations that uses local knowledge and input to actually derive community-based solutions which would ultimately enhance and improve the Department of Transportation preferred alternatives. And in my opinion, based on what we've heard this afternoon, that's exactly what Brian presented to us. I think this allows us to go deeper into the process, which again, I have enormous comfort and confidence in. Until 6 weeks ago, when DOT presented their preferred alternative, we really didn't have much to talk about. But yet the community engaged and came forward critiquing and making recommendations on the preferred alternative. Now those 6,700 signatures were obtained obviously before this presentation today. And so I think many of those signatures on that petition would probably recognize that what we were presented this afternoon is a significant improvement over the preferred alternative from DOT. I would say that as it pertains to brand on the island, the postcard, and I agree with you, Tammy, on this, the postcard isn't the bridge. The postcard is the island and the environment and everything that the island has to offer. I think we're moving in and along the process that we agreed upon a number of months ago. And John and my fellow council, I am very comfortable in continuing to move along and more deeply into that process.
And
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start off by saying, what was the purpose for this meeting? It was my understanding that the purpose of this meeting was to review the alternative suggestions, routes, and designs being suggested by MKSK. And that's exactly what I think has happened here. And that's what I am prepared to do. First, with a major disclaimer, which I think I give to everyone when I'm talking about this, and that is I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not a traffic designer, and I'm not going to go about telling them what to do. I can tell them what I like and what I don't like, but it's up to them to get into the weeds and to resolve these issues. So we were presented with the DOT preferred alternative a number of weeks ago. None of us particularly liked that in the beginning, and I was one of those who didn't like it from the beginning. Frankly, now I think it is dead on arrival. But what we have is a revised design from our own highway design engineers who are making these recommendations based upon the guiding principles, based upon what they see is in the best interests of this community to meet our traffic needs, but also to improve our quality of life. And so as I go down the project and you start off on the bridges, a few weeks ago, I was very impressed with David Ames' suggestion of 2 lanes on and 3 off. I said, gosh, that seems to make some sense. So what did I do? I tested it with MKSK, and I tested it with our own town traffic engineer, and both of them said that that would not solve the problem, that we would continue to have congestion coming onto the island based upon the projected growth that we all must rely on. I have no science on the future growth of traffic coming to the community. And so I said, well, maybe the 2 on, 3 off doesn't really work. Well, MKSK came up with a totally different design for me, at least today, when they said instead of 1 bridge of 6 lanes plus all the other lanes, we have 2 bridges, 1 coming on, 1 going off. That affords a better and more improved bike pedestrian lane, as I see it, from my amateur eyes. And it works to achieve the traffic safety and eases the congestion that is the overall overarching goal of this, while at the same time meeting the quality of project that we expect here on this island. I challenged immediately when I saw a traffic signal at Windmill Harbor. It didn't make any sense to me. And I have been influenced, although not totally convinced at this point, that the intelligent signal approach can work to provide safety to our colleagues and friends in Windmill Harbor while not creating a major congestion problem. I need to see some intelligent traffic signals in operation in a high traffic area before I can finally buy in on that. But I think it is certainly a creative solution. Taking advantage of some of the town-owned land on Jenkins Island is something that, frankly, it's amazing to me DOT didn't come up with in the first place. Because I think what DOT has been coming up with here is we're just going to build another expressway. Well, none of us here on Hilton Head Island want another expressway coming onto our island, but we do recognize there are problems that must be solved. And so I salute MKSK for taking advantage of that. And I have to rely on MKSK and HDR on the design of that so that in fact it does ease congestion and slows people down while taking advantage of the beauty of that area and the natural landscape of the area. When we move to Stony, we have a very incomplete picture. I'm told that the town has been involved some and that MKSK has been involved some with Stony residents, but we don't have anything close to a solution there. We need to be working towards coming up with a solution for those people's benefit while at the same time meeting the goals and objectives of this project. And that's a very difficult balance. But we need to have the heart-to-heart talk with them and to try to get to a solution. So I see that as a totally unresolved issue at this point. It's not something that is the job of MKSK to resolve. Rather, it is up to the town of Hilton Head Island, and to a degree, I suppose, SCDOT, to come to a resolution of that problem, that series of problems there. My dream there is to see for those people a new community on some of this town-owned land that provides them with homes that are modern, that take advantage of the view of the water, and give them fair and free access to the road without having to intersect a 6-lane highway. That may not be realistic, but that is my dream, and it's nothing unique to me in having that dream. Being a resident of Hilton Head Plantation, I never favored the concept of no left turn at Squire Pope. I always thought that the U-turn solution was bizarre at best, and I look at that as dead in the water. I did challenge one of the DOT representatives about, can you tell me where one of these is built? Yes, there's one in Utah. Are there any in South Carolina? No. Have there been any attempted in South Carolina? Yes. What happened to them? They were rejected. How many times were they rejected? 6 times. So we're going to join in that song, no crazy left U-turns coming back, going on to any of our intersections here. Our own traffic engineer has been campaigning for a while on trying to get access roads both north and south from Squire Pope over to Wild Horse and from the other roads to the south to tie them together. I saw from MKSK today a design that included that, but also included an overpass. It seems to me that all other things being equal, an overpass is the true solution to easing that traffic and improving the flow. One of the things that MKSK and Brian talked about today was just exactly that. And I think that that is the one that has been presented to us as being the free flow alternative. That is, having a grade separated intersection, allowing access to and from Squire Pope and the other roads along that area. That continues to make the most sense to me, assuming that it's economically viable. I salute MKSK for doing major improvements to the bike pedestrian lanes and creating actual destinations along the roadway, taking advantage of the views that you can have. That is exactly what this community is about. And it's going to be even more important as we move into the future. Frankly, I think it is time for us to move on to Columbia. For the mayor, town manager, and state senator to go up and sit down with the nuts and bolts of the plan, incomplete as it is, but the concepts here versus the concepts been put forward by DOT, and to get this thing across the finish line, at least to get it started. Maybe not across the finish line, but get it started so that we're moving in the direction we want. I have had dozens of emails from citizens criticizing the DOT project and praising the MKSK ideas and concepts going into this project. And I join with those citizens in saying, thank you, MKSK, for coming up with a good solution that we can hopefully all live with, that deserves further refinement, and I'm sure it will be refined as it moves forward. I look forward to working with my colleagues. I have great respect for each and every one of you and your opinions, and I will continue to listen to you, and I ask you to do the same with me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, everybody. Everybody wants to talk some more, but we have to digest everything we did tonight. Let's meet again next week before we do anything and rehash tonight. Next week we get together another meeting, okay? With that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Have a great evening.